Welcome back to Something in the Wilderness, where I discuss the music of Andrew McMahon from throughout his career, song by song. My name's Steve, and I'm really grateful you're listening today. The last couple of episodes have been relevant to the time of year lyrically. As you may have noticed, they both mention the month of October. But the song I chose for today is especially relevant right now for a different reason. Every year on November 11th, Andrew performs a concert with some musician friends of his, and all proceeds from ticket and merchandise sales go to the Dear Jack Foundation. Andrew created his foundation in 2006 after his own battle with cancer. The mission for the foundation is as follows. The Dear Jack Foundation provides impactful programming that directly benefits adolescents and young adults diagnosed with cancer in order to improve quality of life and create positive health outcomes from treatment to survivorship for patients and their families. The 11th annual benefit show this year will take place virtually, of course. If you're listening to this before November 11th, you can still order a ticket online at www.dearjackfoundation.org. The concert starts at 5:30 Pacific Time or 8:30 Eastern Time, and the stream is available to watch for another 48 hours afterward. The song I'm talking about today is not only the namesake for the foundation, but it also inspired the name of Andrew's band at the time. Let's learn a bit about a young man named Jack and the song Andrew wrote to him many years ago. This song will be the first non-LP track discussed here on Something in the Wilderness. It was not on any of the band's full albums. In fact, it was the first song written for the project. The band I'm referring to is Jack's Mannequin, and the song is Dear Jack. This is track 1 from the Dear Jack EP, which I believe was released on November 3rd, 2009. I say that because iTunes and Spotify list the release date as October 30th. The documentary film of the same name had premiered in early October, and the DVD was released on November 3rd, so we'll just go with that date. It was a Tuesday, which is the day of the week that CDs and DVDs were released back then, and according to IMDb, the Dear Jack film climbed as high as number 4 on the top sold movies of the day on iTunes in its second day of release. That's impressive. As far as the EP goes, though, there were actually 3 Jack's Mannequin EP releases in the Glass Passenger era, and I tend to lump them together. All 3 had at least one song from the album, but all 3 also had a few non-album tracks. In my opinion, several tracks off of those EPs are just as good as many of the Glass Passenger tracks, and the track we're talking about today is one of them. This EP is the only official release with Dear Jack on it. There's no official live versions and no alternate versions that I can find. Though there's no music video, you can find Andrew performing it on a piano at the end of the Dear Jack documentary film. So a few background notes. Andrew has stated this is the first song that he wrote for Jack's Mannequin, before he even knew it would be called Jack's Mannequin. Apparently, he was thinking about naming the project The Mannequins, but decided to incorporate the name Jack from the song into the band's name somehow. The writing of the song and the naming of their band are really ironic, because he had no idea how close the message of the song would hit home within a year. It's hard to believe that he wrote this for someone else, considering the lyrics and the overall message of the song, but this song was actually written before he was diagnosed with acute lymphoblastic leukemia. In fact, he wrote it for a friend's younger brother, who was a childhood leukemia survivor. Though Andrew didn't know Jack during his treatment, he admired his spirit, and he was genuinely concerned about him, because at the time he was getting into some trouble. Here's a pretty lengthy quote from the Dear Jack Foundation website on a page titled Jack's Influence. Stick with me here, it's long, but worth the read. Or the listen. I'll also link this page in the show notes. Quote, Jack was scrappy and defiant. He was a rule breaker. He fought and caused trouble and was free and filled with electricity. I'd never met anyone like him. When I found myself at the piano writing his song, a letter really, it was because that spirit of defiance and the freight train of history behind it had started to work against him. He was finding more trouble than he could manage, and as someone who had mentored and befriended him, it broke my heart to watch. The song stuck with me. It was the first I'd penned for a solo record outside of the band I'd been leading since high school, and despite it not appearing on the album, I honored its place in my journey by committing Jack's name to my solo moniker. I began recording and traveling as Jack's Mannequin. In the aftermath of my cancer, I started to recognize that fire and electricity I noticed in Jack so many years ago. I've never asked him, but I have to wonder if that defiant spirit wasn't born of long hospital days and having learned from a young age how hard you might have to fight to stay alive. I know for me, years after what some would consider a full recovery from cancer, I was often confused and sometimes raging towards the death I'd escaped. Time and perspective has healed much of that, but there are moments where I linger in it, and I think of my old friend and the tie that binds us through disease and art and survival. I think Andrew does an incredible job of making his songs feel so personal. And this quote from the Foundation's website is evidence of the passion and heart he puts into his writing. So even though the song itself was not about his own experience, it's a very personal message to someone he knew and he still cares about. Let's talk about the live history. I could only find this song listed 4 times on all of Setlist FM. It's hard to believe that that's accurate. After all 10 years of the Dear Jack benefit shows, it's only listed on the 2013 set list. The only time it was listed for Jack's Mannequin at all was in October 2008, which is a full year before the song was officially released. Another time he played it was at the movie premiere of the Dear Jack film in October 2009. I was reading fan comments on a website where it's mentioned by more than one fan that Jack's Mannequin performed this song several times throughout 2009 before it was released on the EP, sounding as if people were anticipating its eventual release. I know that Setlist FM isn't going to be accurate 100% of the time, but it's usually a good reference point for how often songs get played. So, if you've ever been at Jack's Mannequin concert or a Wilderness concert and you heard this song performed, let me know. Let's get it added on Setlist FM. Andrew did perform this song on the Instagram live stream on August 5th this year. He told the story about writing it for Jack, and that although he hasn't talked to him in a while, he heard he's doing okay. I was glad to hear that. The lyrics do paint a pretty bleak picture of the story, which leads me to the next topic. So let's talk some lyrics. These lyrics are pretty heavy, in two different ways actually. So I'm going to tell you a story. For years, like many casual fans who didn't read all the blogs, all the articles, and see Jack's Mannequin in concert more than a few times, I'd assumed this song was written about Andrew's own struggle with cancer and his treatment. So let me walk you through how I drew up that conclusion a decade ago. Jack's Mannequin was the name of the band. I'd wondered about the name previously, like, how did he land on that name anyway? And I couldn't help but think of the movie Fight Club. Have you ever seen that movie? If you've seen that movie and you remember it well, you know where I'm going with this. But for those of you who don't remember the film, I'm going to read you some quotes from it. All from the narrator or main character of the story. Quote, "I am Jack's raging bile duct. I am Jack's cold sweat. I am Jack's complete lack of surprise. I am Jack's inflamed sense of rejection. I am Jack's smirking revenge. I am Jack's broken heart." It's the technique the narrator of the story uses to describe how he feels, calling himself different parts of Jack's body or personality. The character is going through something very traumatic, and he needs to separate out pieces of himself to keep functioning. So, 5 or 6 years after the film was released, I thought here Andrew McManus naming a solo project Jack's Mannequin because maybe he felt like a hollow shell of a human being during the time of his life. And this was his way of compartmentalizing this new persona of a solo musician. Maybe he was having trouble expressing himself. So bringing it back to the subject of the song, I also assumed that the lyrics to Dear Jack, which I didn't hear until another 4 years later, were written as a message to himself, or an extension of himself. Maybe during a traumatic event like cancer treatment or his recovery. I'm going to try something different here. Bear with me, especially if you're the most hardcore Jack's Mannequin fan you know. What if this song was written about Andrew's own experience? I know what we know to be true, but what if? Allow me to analyze these lyrics through that lens just for a few minutes. And try not to get upset with me. Let's pretend for a few minutes that this song is about Andrew's own struggle, a letter to himself. Take, for instance, the song's first lines. "Dear Jack, I'll write you as a friend, dear friend. I fear the end is coming soon. To you it's not so clear, it's clear to me. It's clear as glass, dear Jack. Dear Hope, attach it to the end of your rope." What I hear is a man who is questioning whether he may live or die. The end is coming soon. It's clear to me. Dear Hope, attach it to the end of your rope. I also hear a theme of long-term dreams potentially falling short, regardless of all the work that was put into these dreams. A rope that wove ambition in with sorrow. Distancing tomorrow, tomorrow's coming past. The chorus seems to separate the two sides of his personality further, though. You were the fighter. I was the kid against the world. I heard there's nothing gonna hold you down. You're bound to the ground. Then there's the bridge. I had songs for you. I had all your music written out. The words came when I heard you screaming. I had plans for you, until the plans fell through. Now there's no turning back. Could Andrew be imagining all of his life's work that would have been, had he not gotten sick? He starts to realize that he may die young, but his life and his life's work isn't finished yet. He has so many more songs, some that he's already written, but those plans might be out the window. There's no turning back now, regardless of the outcome of this illness. His entire life trajectory has changed. Maybe not off course completely, but different. You can imagine why someone would believe this about the lyrics, right? This is what makes the song so fascinating to me. Not that it is about Andrew's own experience, but that it could have been. So many, if not all, the lyrics lend itself to that interpretation. But since we do know that Jack was someone from Andrew's past that had survived cancer, and we know that this song is about that Jack because Andrew has stated it publicly many times that the song was written before he was ever diagnosed himself, the song does take on somewhat of a different meaning, but still pretty powerful. The words he uses to show concern for Jack are pretty poignant. So let's review some of the lyrics again and how they relate to his buddy Jack. Dear Jack, I'll write you as a friend, dear friend. I fear the end is coming soon. To you it's not so clear, it's clear to me. It's clear as glass, dear Jack. Dear Hope, attach it to the end of your rope, a rope that wove ambition in with sorrow, distancing tomorrow, tomorrow's coming past. He's genuinely concerned about this guy. Jack's heading down the wrong path. He has so much potential that he doesn't even realize, and Andrew wishes he could save him. From what? Self-destruction? A pattern of bad decisions? A bad situation? The picture he paints is pretty grim, though. The end is coming soon? To you it's not so clear, but to me it's clear as glass? Is there any hope left here? I think the chorus brings Andrew's message to Jack a little more in focus. You were the fighter. I was the kid against the world. I heard there's nothing gonna hold you down. I'll use a lighter so you can see what isn't there. We'll swing at air. Swinging off eventually, you're bound to the ground. I think Andrew's using the lyrics in this chorus to draw comparisons between himself and Jack, to tell him, hey man, I know where you're coming from. I felt like I had the world against me when I was young too. We both had this attitude that nothing can hold us down, but the truth is, it's time to take a step back and look around. I'll use a lighter so you can see what isn't there. Then he goes on to tell Jack whatever it is that's getting in his way, he'll help him, but he cautions him that if they're swinging at air or battling nothing, then he's not really accomplishing anything with this attitude. Let's revisit that bridge again now. I had songs for you. I had all your music written out. The words came when I heard you screaming. He's identifying with Jack's feeling of frustration and anger toward the world. Andrew knows those feelings, and he's had them when he was young. Maybe he still does, but he has a more adult perspective on it now. He's written songs about it, and he continues to do it. It helps him. In this part, I had plans for you, until the plans fell through. Now there's no turning back, my dear Jack. This is the line that tells me they're not in touch anymore. Andrew has referred to Jack as the little brother of an old friend. He's also stated that the friend was a female and that he knew their parents well. Maybe it was an ex-girlfriend's little brother. Maybe he thought they'd remain in touch, but let's face it, once you settle down with your significant other, you don't usually keep in touch with your ex's family members, right? This is complete speculation on my part, but it's my guess as to why Jack and Andrew aren't close anymore. Now, given my interpretation of the lyrics, where Andrew did actually write this song for Jack, an old friend of his who beat cancer, and was a little older by the time they knew each other, I do wonder how this song became the namesake for his foundation, and the name of the documentary film about his own battle with cancer. But I have to assume that when Andrew was diagnosed, he immediately thought of his old friend Jack, and he started to understand Jack's defiant attitude more once the battle was brought to his own front door. So, let's move on from lyrics. I could go on all day. I want to talk a little bit about the sound of the song itself. I think what I like about the music in this song is that it's pretty different from most anything on The Glass Passenger. It's not that I didn't enjoy The Glass Passenger, but it was a pretty unique and eclectic record, and this entire EP to me was a signal toward the next era of Jack's Mannequin. This is more of the sound I was hoping for from Jack's Mannequin. Fortunately, I'd get my wish with their third record, but that's for another day. I appreciate in this song from the get-go you get equal parts piano, guitar, bass, and percussion. The guitar's so smooth in that first verse. In fact, I think it actually slows down the song a bit. It's a pretty unique style for Bobby the guitarist. This song is clearly driven by the piano throughout, though, which is especially made clear in the chorus. The chorus by itself makes it sound like a fast song, but I think it's because of the missing guitar to pull it back a bit. The verses play to me more like a ballad. Come to think of it, there is a song on The Glass Passenger that this song does remind me of, but only one. The chorus of Dear Jack has the same feel and tone to it as Crashin', which is the first track on Glass Passenger. But then the chorus of Crashin' is like many of the songs on the record, whereas it becomes more of a rock song. That's where Dear Jack doesn't quite fit on The Glass Passenger. Sure, there's a couple of ballads on the record, but the sound of Dear Jack somehow falls comfortably in the middle of the entire scope of sound within that record. It truly is a different style in my opinion. My favorite part of the song, though, has to be the bridge. Not only are those lyrics so powerful and full of emotion, I had songs for you. I had all your music written out. The words came when I heard you screaming. I had plans for you, until the plans fell through. Now there's no turning back, my dear Jack. The music also slows down here, but something else interesting happens. The guitar and the piano switch places. For those moments, the guitar is brought to the forefront with the piano as the backdrop. The opposite of the rest of the song. I appreciate that technique. It really makes me notice that bridge. Andrew truly flexes his songwriting muscle on the song overall. It's fitting to me that it has its own EP named after it, and it's more of a standalone track rather than somewhere in the middle of the next record. The only other recorded version I know of this song was on the Instagram live set I mentioned earlier. Unfortunately, that video on YouTube is no longer available, so I won't be able to link it in the show notes. I really wish I had recorded those somehow. I had created a playlist of other people's videos, but they were recently taken down. I'm not sure if there was a legal reason or what, but I'd love to watch through those again, so if you know where I can find them, please shoot me an email. The version on Instagram that he performed that day was right up near the top in terms of quality renditions of his songs. I love what he did with the piano solo in the middle. It was also interesting to hear it with no guitar, since the guitar is so prominent in the first verse and in the bridge in the original recording. Well, if you can get a hold of the Instagram live stream from August 5th, I'd highly recommend it. Some final thoughts on the subject of this song. Most people my age have been at least indirectly impacted by cancer. It's a mysterious and awful disease, but doctors are learning more about it every day, and they're finding new treatments. I myself have lost several people in my life to cancer, people I wish I could see and talk to again. And some of them were taken far too young. 2 years ago, a family friend of ours passed away. That one hit really close to home as she was exactly my age. We have the same birth date and had known each other since birth. Our mothers have been good friends our whole lives. It's hard to understand how the life of such a beautiful soul could be cut so short. 6 years ago, my grandmother died of leukemia at the age of 76. She was very active and social right up until the month before she passed. It wasn't completely unexpected, but she was diagnosed about 16 months earlier, and she knew for much of that time that the cancer would eventually take her life. On one hand, I'm glad she had time to make peace with it, and I'm especially glad to have talked to her a few times during her fight, but it doesn't make the loss any easier. I know it's still painful for members of my family as well. A few months before she lost her battle, she recorded a story she read to share with my daughters for Christmas. I feel really fortunate to have this recording, and I played it for them recently.
His eyes, how they twinkled. His dimples, how merry. His cheeks were like roses, his nose like a cherry. His droll little mouth was drawn up like a bow, and the beard on his chin was as white as the snow.
If you can find a way to help in the fight against cancer, I encourage you to do so. Whether it's donating to the Dear Jack Foundation to help young adults in their battle or to lessen their burdens, or it's donating blood or platelets at your local Red Cross, or just get educated and find other ways to help. I'm going to end with a quote from Andrew at his 2018 Dear Jack Foundation benefit concert. He said, "This is a show I do because I'm grateful to be alive. I do this show because as imperfect a person as I am, and I promise that I'm truly imperfect, someone told me that what I went through, you have a chance, you have an opportunity, you have a voice, you have a stage, you have a platform, and you survived it. And you got to make it easier for those who follow behind you." Check out www.dearjackfoundation.org to find out how you can get involved and get a ticket for the 11/11 concert, whether it be this year or in person next year. Thanks again for listening.